Hello, hello, and welcome to the Cornfield. I'm Jamie Beeman. This week, I talked to Michael Kostroff, an actor who you would recognize right away from his many screen appearances, particularly his recurring role on the hit TV series The Wire. Michael is a theater educator. He is also a very fine director, and that's how we met. I auditioned for him for a production of a Neil Simon play he was directing several years ago. He cast me, and we've been friends ever since. Michael's also written several books, and that's where our conversation starts. Here it is. I had never been on a tour before, and I really wanted to know what I was going to do. And there were no books. There were no books on touring life, and Michael wrote one. And that was the thing that really gave me an insight into him and his ethic as an artist. And then I got to be directed by him. And we'll talk about all of these things, and we're going to plug his latest book. He's prolific, and he's also a great teacher and a coach who's brought his Audition Psych 101 class across the country and changed the way that actors think about the process of hustling for work. So here he is. Hello, Michael Kostroff.
Hi. Oh my God. After that introduction, I feel like I'm about 97 years old.
You know what?
This great man with us.
Well, our conversation will disabuse people of that.
Maybe. I don't know. We're funny
of your
guys.
greatness.
Yes, that's right.
So we touched on this as we were signing on to this call. You're in LA right now.
I am.
And the SAG-AFTRA strike and the WGA strike is happening. Yeah, a great time in the dead times of the summer ending and Labor Day and all of that stuff. There's this solidarity, though. You said you're feeling very positive about that.
I keep saying, if you go out to the picket lines, you've never seen a happier group of unemployed people. We really bolster each other up just by showing up and saying good morning and seeing each other, and people drive by and they honk in support. And it sucks. It sucks what's going on, and it sucks how long it's going on. And it really is, many great works of art have been written about the clash between the common man and the big ugly conglomerates and big rich fat cats. And this is one of those stories, and I think the public is starting to realize this is not a story about movie stars. This is a story about blue-collar workers, writers, and actors who are, we're not asking much. We just want to make a living, And so, anyway, I feel like there's a simple thing about this strike, which is that there is no plan B. There's no turning back. We have to win. And it's hardship for many.
Do you think that because, a lot of this, there's the AI thing, which I have mixed feelings about. As a writer, I just think it's just horrendous.
Yes.
Horrendous. And I think it's terrible. It's wonderful, good for you with your technology, but I think it's a terrible, terrible thing because we're already doing this homogenization and this, I think, dumbing down of story and of vision and all of that is happening. And then it just robots. If they're going to take over, then let's just do it. Let's just let the robots take over.
I always say every movie that has somebody in the first reel say, the robots are our friends. They want to help us. They don't end well. These films don't end well. We've seen the movies.
That's right. The other thing that's more important to me is, there are so many aspects of our lives and of our culture and of our industry in particular that had to change as a result of those 2.5, 3 years of lockdown, that it changed things. And we in so many areas, we have not taken the time when coming back to process, to regroup, to rethink, and to restructure. We're not doing that.
We got used to being operating in separate rooms. Like I teach 3 acting classes a week. 2 of them are on Zoom, which was a wonderful boon when we were in lockdown. And there's something sort of sad about it too, because creating art together requires breathing the same air in the same room. So I'm glad that I get to teach those classes. And there's also something not completely right about that. And we're doing a lot of things in separate rooms now. And I agree with you that we haven't taken a moment to sort of think about that, you know?
Well, I think that, one of the things that, and I'm a SAG-AFTRA member too, I rarely ever work, but, you know, uh, the streaming networks, the way that we receive content
Yeah.
and the way that it is produced and the way that it is banked. I mean, I think one of the reasons why negotiations are stalling is because they've got such a backlog of content on these streaming networks that they can just,
Maybe. Yeah.
bide their time. I don't know. But that whole thing was our way of seeing films, seeing television, producing all that content. It's the way of the industry. And there are
Hmm.
things that we're being told to accept. We'll talk self-tape auditions in a little while. It's one of my big bugaboos. Uh, why is it such a thing to ask the producers, these big companies that are producing content, to rethink the way in which they compensate
I mean,
actors and
listen,
writers?
well, they're business people and we're artists. It comes down to that. So for
Yeah.
them, whatever makes the most money makes the most sense. And for us, what makes the best art makes the most sense, you know? And so um, I think one of the writers was saying, and by the way, one of the interesting things about being on the picket line is writers and actors don't usually get to speak to each other in TV and film. And we're getting to know each other and how we work. And
Cool.
one of them said to me, this has really shone a light on the disdain and disregard they have for the art part of this.
Right.
Because if they think a computer or a robot can replicate the human experience, that's a heartbreak to me. I don't want that. I don't want to see robot television, you know. And but it's bottom line. It's people who think about the bottom line. It's a different brain. Honestly, it's a different brain, you know.
Yeah.
And
And
I love to
unfortunately,
remind people that long before there were producers, casting directors, agents, we actually predate those people. I know that's shocking, but they didn't have press agents in ancient Greece, and so uh, uh, we're now being treated like the interlopers when we're the ones who make it happen. It's really crazy.
it is crazy because I think all of us needed to take a moment and go, okay,
Yeah,
uh, and realize what was lost. And this is the part of it that I get passionate about when it comes to actors, people like us. Very few, and writers too. Very few make a living at it, a full
yeah,
time living at it.
yeah.
Rarely, ever. And it's this thing of I know for me, my finances, and my career taken away from me for 3 years, which was, for an itinerant regional theater actor working 6, 8 months out of the year, is pretty darn good.
Hmm.
Um, and why we didn't immediately go into negotiations, immediately go, okay, reset, restart, because we certainly have seen other innovations that were put in place before lockdown was over.
Cable. Oh, yes, I see what you're saying. Yes, yes,
We'll talk about that,
right.
about ways of being with each other at work and
Yes.
diversity quotas and all of that stuff that has changed everything before we even had a chance to see where we were at, I think.
Can I get
What do
on a
you think?
Can I go on a complete tangent for about a
Please,
second?
please
You,
do. I
I,
always
wa-
do.
you know what else? What else we never got to stop and assess? We never got to stop and assess the fact that we have our first female black vice president, and we miss celebrating that because of all the mishigas with the election. I want a belated party for the fact that this was history was made, and
Right?
we didn't even get to stop and talk about it because of the fucking crazy people. Anyway, back to what
Mm.
we were talking about. But
That
I
is
was
true. That
yes,
is true. And there are many things that got overlooked,
yes.
and acts of courage and all kinds of things. People are so addicted to negativity
Hmm.
and
Not
to
us,
just
not you and me. I mean,
no,
as we
no. And
kvetch about everything. Yeah.
like kvetching is different. Kvetching is
Okay.
different
Oh,
because
I
we
see.
want things to be better. We don't want to perpetuate
Okay.
problems so that we can bitch about it. I hope. I mean, I'd like to think that
I like
I'm
to
a
have things
little
to bitch
more.
about. Yeah.
But I love to bitch about things. And this is the other thing. One of the reasons I started doing this crazy thing, for
Yeah.
whatever it's worth, was that I was told I couldn't talk. I was told I'm not allowed to have an
Oh
opinion.
yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
allowed to, that I'm the old guard or the old school or whatever the hell it is, and shut up and sit down and give someone else a chance. And I'm like, I'll give you a chance. You got something. What are you bringing?
Yeah.
Is my thing. Um, which brings us to something I'm very passionate about, and I love that you did this. You wrote a book with a co-writer whose name you will give us, the Stage Actor's Handbook,
Yes. The
and
co-writer is Julie Garnier. Yes.
Julie. Um, and this is a bold. It's funny because it's all about the traditions and the
Mm.
etiquette and the working. Uh, uh, uh,
The
what
best
I
practices. It's best practices.
yeah, best
The way we
practices.
work together. You know. Yeah.
Yeah, and in the theater. And a lot of this stuff, I mean, I was brought up on this stuff, and to me, it's always given it a sense of, given the place a sense of pride. That
Mm-hmm.
we all feel like a sense of we're here to create something together. And touring, and you've done long running things. Once you've done a few hundred shows of something, what really becomes, if you're the type of person who appreciates this kind of thing, what becomes the day-to-day pleasure of it is showing up with discipline and
And
doing your show and
professionalism. Yes.
delivering
Mm-hmm.
and being part of the whole and holding up your end. Uh, so you decided to do this thing. Why now? I think it's needed, but why now?
Right. It wasn't really intended as a radical act, which maybe it is, but
It is now, I think.
I was surprised to find that there was no such book because I think a lot of us in theater, part of the magic of it is we have these secret codes and these ways of working, and you get to as you say, you get to sort of show off that the ropes, the rules, who's allowed to say what to whom, and what the terminologies are, and we celebrate the superstitions, whether we believe in it or not, and it makes it this beautiful secret club of mystics,
Mm.
these alchemists that have we have our secret ways, and I love that. I know you do too, and many people in theater love that. And part of the fun coming into it is learning all that stuff. And
Mm.
I was shocked that there's no handbook to say you're
Mm.
not allowed to give a fellow actor a note. Here's why. We just know that. We just know that
Mm.
you can't
Mm.
sign in for somebody else. You have to sign in for yourself.
Right.
Everybody's got their half-hour ritual. You got to sort of stay clear. And also just other. I'm making it sound like it's all rules. It's not. It's how things work. It's we Julie and I call it what to expect and how to behave when working in professional theater. So um, I I'm delighted that it's out in the world. I'm delighted that it's being so well received. I mean,
Mm.
university professors are assigning it. It's becoming a regular reading list. The Drama Bookshop in New York City cannot keep them in stock. It's because it was missing. It was missing.
Yeah,
And
it's part of the akashic record of being a theater person that
yeah,
that somebody puts it all down.
and I'm big on that legacy. That we have a whole chapter about the stage actor's legacy, the tradition of mentorship, the you know
Mm.
the ghost light, the tribe, all these little the show must go on. This is our
Mm.
legacy, and so I'm so it's very fulfilling to have been involved in marking that legacy with a book,
Mm.
that didn't
Mm.
exist. I mean, I called all over the world looking for this book, and when a theater bookshop in London says no, there is no such book, I was like, okay, I didn't want to write it. I wanted somebody else to write it, but it had to be written. So
Now, what
that's why
kind
we
of
did it.
what kind of stuff did you discover that you didn't know? Things
Oh,
that are part of. I mean, I know British theater has kind of different than us, but we've adopted some of theirs because we sort of love British theater. I think those of us who do
well,
theater.
yeah, I discovered a whole bunch of superstitions that we don't follow, which we left out of the book because they're just not part of our practice. But there are all kinds of
Okay.
things like like no mirrors on stage, no green, no yellow, no peacock feathers, all these things that we don't do. You know, we discovered the origins of some things that were pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I also found that some of my rules are not universal, and we really held ourselves to a very high standard of like we don't get to give our opinion in this book. These are accepted practices. I don't accept comps. I believe in supporting theater. If it, and I was just getting ready to put that in the book, and Julie's like, "That's not a rule, Michael. That's something you do." I'm like, "Okay, got it." So we really towed the line in terms of can we vet and prove that this is a tradition that's so yeah, we learned all kinds of things writing the book, and it's the other thing that's really wonderful is when we started reaching out to legendary stage performers to tell them what we were doing, they all wrote stuff for the book about their own throughout the book. It's dotted with these little anecdotes and observations about being a professional actor. Like I love BB Newirth wrote something about honoring your physical script, the paper. That's your place to keep notes and cartoons and ideas, and that you should like never mess with somebody else's script. And she says you got to have paper. It has to be paper. And it was beautiful what she wrote.
Nice.
And I love that.
Yes.
Who was it? I'm blanking on this. Oh, Alfred Molina wrote. He said, "Okay, look, when you move from the rehearsal studio to the theater, it's all going to go to shit. Don't worry, that's part of the process." And I love
Right.
that. Yeah.
That's
So
great.
anyway,
And it's so true. It's so true. And I wonder, do you think that there's a readership outside of our tribe, outside of our little demi-monde of
possible.
weirdos?
I mean, I don't know why, but they would want to read it. But if they do, that's. I mean, I think that's.
I think theater fans,
Yeah.
the real theater fans, especially since there's anecdotal stuff from names that they know and all that.
Yes.
I think they'd be into that
Maybe
backstage
so.
look.
Maybe so. We had. It was particularly interesting approaching topics like sexual harassment, which is an interesting one in the theater, and finding a nuanced way to talk about that, and talking about the gypsy tradition, which is a word that's been unfairly vilified, and doing that in a way that was not preachy, not opinionated, just presenting what is,
Yeah.
and how the theater operates.
Yeah. So let's talk about that because the first job I had back in theater was last summer, August of 2022, doing a show up in Massachusetts. And it was my encounter with activism in the workplace, totally, completely inappropriate pile-on, beating up on an actor who was having to play a scene about racism. It was unnecessary. It was ugly, and nothing prepared me for that because that's not the way I work. So I started doing some research. That's what led me here, about how Actors Equity Association is revising or updating all kinds of policies. And one of these things, the sexual harassment thing, sexual harassment is, come on, it's no good. We've all been in shows with the hotshot star guy who thinks he's a stud, grabbing girls' butts and all that crap.
Yeah.
It's terrible and doesn't belong anywhere. Right. But consent for everything. Consent for we're doing a scene together and we're in the flow of rehearsing and, and I touch you. I have to stop and say, is it okay if I touch you here? Or, and some people would say yes. Like I just did the musical Oliver out in summer stock, and wonderful place. And they really took care of everybody because there were 20 kids. They wanted to make sure that they were doing, because it's an educational thing as well. But we had an intimacy coordinator, and it's the first time I've been on a show with an intimacy coordinator. And some of it was really valuable. It was kind of a sort of an adjunct to what the stage combat choreographer was doing. But part of it was, I'm going to say this, I'll probably get dinged for it, but it seemed like a ritual. It seemed like, let's show everybody that we're taking care of.
Performative.
Yeah, like fake kiss before the kiss. Like, two actors who like each other doing a scene. Nancy and Bill, they have to kiss, and there has to be 45 minutes of talking it
Discussion.
through and stages to the thing. And I just think it stops the creative flow. We have to trust each other
So
a
here's what
little.
we gain and here's what we lose.
Okay.
Um, we have there are villains. I've worked with guys. It's always guys. Sorry, but it is. You
Yeah.
know who are grossly inappropriate at work. You know,
Yeah.
and
They're not just straight either, by the way. They're
no,
not just straight.
I know. I mean, I've been the equity deputy in productions where this was happening, and so
Mm,
uh, it is something that needs to be curbed and stopped. What we lose is, and again, those people are the minority, and we're compensating for the minority. What we lose is learning to be uh, a gentleman and a collaborator on your own. I have always, anytime I had any physical things, said to the actress, "What are you comfortable with? What works for you? You know, I want to make sure you're okay." You know, and you, we always were fine with taking care of our own. We get to get. In other words, when you learn professionalism and you learn the traditions of working in the theater, that should be part of what you learn. So it's such a given
right.
that anything that steps out of that is shocking and dealt with right away, as opposed to preemptively dealing with something that doesn't exist. It's very much like this. I grew up with a lot of black culture. If
Mm,
somebody wants to now sit down and prepare me for dealing with those people, it's very weird and foreign and hurts my heart because it's my family you're talking about. It's like talking
agreed.
to me about how I'm allowed to talk to my mother and my sister. It's like it makes me so sad. It's the othering of a group.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
oh, now we have to protect ourselves against each other. And it's
Yes.
so sad because one of the things I love about theater is you throw all these crazy folks together in a room, and part of the art, part of the yeah, I'll call it part of the art, part of the discipline, is the fact that every time we go to work with a whole new group of people, and we have to get really good at navigating the different personalities and
Very fast.
the different needs. Listen, I'm open about this, so I don't mind saying it on a podcast. Besides, you only have 4 listeners. You know, because I was molested as a kid, there are certain
Yeah.
physical things that freak me out.
Yep.
That's my job. It's my job to say to somebody, "Hey, if you sneak up behind me and grab me, it's going to be like I'm going to turn. I'm going to want to punch you. It's going to freak me out.
Right.
My fault, not yours. No, you know. But it's my job, or it's my job to say I'm not cool with that fight. It doesn't feel safe to me, or it's my job to
Right.
take care of myself and or to say, you know, and I've known many friends at this point that were uh, um, accused of sexual harassment or being inappropriate or unapproved touching, and they were just literally seriously like patted somebody on the back and said something loud, and uh, and they are not allowed to talk to the person who was offended.
Yeah. That's
And,
right.
this is, I'm sorry, it's part of being a grown up. You work it out between you. If you can't,
Yeah.
we have methodologies for that too. That's when you go to a stage manager. That's when you go to a company manager.
Yeah.
But this whole, to me, it's I it's
I
horrible
think
to
it's
think that we
I
might
think it's
need this.
bad faith. It's bad faith.
Bad faith.
It's
Thank you.
going in with the assumption that certain people, based
Right,
on certain immutable characteristics,
right,
need to be managed.
right,
Uh, because left to their own devices, they'll do all kinds of stuff and say the wrong things.
right,
Uh,
right.
and it's also, to me, yeah, I agree with you. I took it on myself, God help me, but I'm really glad I did. And I advise every member of Actors Equity Association, if any of you are secretly listening, um, because for some reason, talking about an industry I've been in for 33 years in really honest terms is verboten. But anyway, um, you know, we have to get to a place where we trust each other again, because that is the essence of what we do. It, we
it's
can't,
it's it's family. It's family. It should be like
yes.
family.
And I don't, so I went onto the site. This is the thing I was trying to get at,
Uh oh.
to the Actors Equity website. And I don't know if
Yes.
a lot of people know about it, that there is a best practices for inclusive theater workplaces training.
Mm.
That is like a PowerPoint thing, and you go through the thing and you answer multiple choice questions at the end of each module, and then you get a certificate. And I have to tell you, this DEI thing that they created is so, first of all, it's like somebody who'd never been in our business put it together.
Hmm.
Or hasn't been in like 40 years, and it is introducing the idea of discrimination and meanness and nastiness and
Hmm.
exclusion.
Whether or not
Um,
it's there. Yeah.
it's not
Right.
there. And like it says at the very beginning of the course, it says, Actors Equity Association has traditionally been a white supremacist organization. That's the first thing they say.
Mm. It's
And I don't care what Robin DiAngelo says. I don't care what she thinks about original sin and systemic racism. I've been a member of that union for 33 years. I'm a lifelong theater person, grew up in it. Um, the theater industry integrated the theaters.
mm.
They held the National Theater in Washington, D.C. hostage for 5 years until they integrated front and back of house.
Hmm.
We created the Rosetta Lenoir Award. We've been there for people with HIV/AIDS since the very beginning.
Hmm.
We take care of our own. And I just feel like introducing all of this stuff, especially for young kids, because this is what I'm getting at in my diatribe, is these young kids don't know
The history.
to read your book. They don't know to look to someone like me or when I've worked on shows.
Which again was always part of the tradition. Is people
Yeah,
who had been in the theater longer than I pulled me aside and set me straight on some things.
yeah,
Um, I think here's the thing, and I know you will agree with this statement. We are losing the idea of nuance. So
yeah,
there are things that need to evolve in the theater. We need more theater about other groups besides white people. We need that. We need more
yeah,
stories. We need, oh God, do we need that? More stories about Asian folks and Latinos and trans people. We need those stories. We want them.
yeah,
Um, so, but that does not mean that everybody currently working in the industry is the enemy, and that we've been fighting against that stuff. To me, this has always been
right.
the place where you go when you don't have a family. Sometimes, this is always a place that we go, come on in. You're crazy, you're weird, you're whatever you are, come on in, we love you. And I think it's been and yes, I know that many people have not had that experience, and
Mm,
we need to work on that together as a
yeah,
group.
yeah,
But what we don't need to do is this othering, which is so heartbreaking, to treat people like they're aliens, and that you have to step around them, and also to come into a work environment with a sense of entitlement that it needs to operate in a way that is comfortable for you. When it's like,
right.
hon, it's the theater, it's the theater, and but I want to listen. One of the signs to me of the closeness that I have with people in certain other groups is the horrifically insulting things we say to each other for fun. Do I do I get mocked for liking girls? I do. Do I mock you for being gay? I do.
Yeah,
It's part of what shows that we love each other, and we're comfortable with each other. The things that I say between my black friends and me would get me fired from any job, and
yep,
them. You
yeah.
know, because we're like, it's us. It's us. I
Yeah.
mean, um,
And I don't know who those performances are for because I've been in the line of fire of this shit. And here's the problem, you talk about mentorship, it breaks my heart. And now I go into the workplace looking this, and I'm the oppressor
yeah,
for some of these people.
it's
And
it
that it's
it
somehow okay to disrupt the process to completely bypass professionalism and ethics and just being a decent person and start attacking someone.
well, especially because you're attacking, in many cases, somebody who is absolutely a friend, who loves
Yeah.
you, who wants you to thrive, and who believes in you and believes in your opportunities, and
Hmm.
wants you to be a happy and fulfilled artist. And you're attacking somebody who's absolutely an ally, and you know. Uh, especially, I mean, we're Jews. We
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
we were. I mean, sorry, but we weren't slave owners. We were busy dealing with
We
pogroms.
were
You know,
Slavs. Yeah, we
yeah,
were in shtetls. Yes, it's
right.
true.
So
It's true.
it's not to
No,
not.
but it's interesting that you say that, and it's something I want to touch on. There's so many things to touch on. I never get
Oh
to
yeah,
see you
we
enough.
have to. Oh my God,
It's okay.
so many things.
We'll do things. But yeah, I mean, look, I saw what's happening now that I like. I'm very much against DEI as an industry and as a bureaucracy, and I don't like the way it's poisoning our society and
I just wish it wasn't
re-racial.
preemptive. I wish it wasn't preemptive,
I
because
just don't like it. It
what I would
makes an
like
assumption that you're a bigot and you need to be schooled.
the way I would wish it was is that when we see a bigot or a sexual harasser, get the fuck out. We don't do that here. We in this tribe, we don't tolerate that shit.
I
That's
think
what
the
I want.
spiral of silence works both ways. I think people need to get some balls.
Yes,
My feeling is, as a theater actor, especially, how often do we get to work? What percentage of our union is working at any given time? 6%?
let's
It's
celebrate.
like, yeah, let's go in there and like bring our best stuff and, not come from a place of, the thing with like gender identity, I respect anybody's gender identity. And
Of
it's been
course,
rare in a company of actors, crew, creative
yeah,
team, people.
sure,
If that's something else, but amongst actors, it's very rare that somebody says I'm non-binary or whatever. And if you're working with someone who's trans, they're trans, and you're like, hey, you know, because
right.
I love my friends who are creative, trans, performer, like
Yeah,
leaders, icons.
of course.
I love them. Um, but all this emphasis on you must say this to me and my identity is this and it must be respected seems to me you need to not be monitoring that because you're here to act. You're here to play a role. You're here to be someone else. And in a company of actors, it's not about people catering to you. It's about you bringing a sense of
And
you're
for the
going to
most
give
part,
your trust.
we're like, okay, you're who we're. I want you to feel comfortable and respected and heard. So I'm going to
Yeah.
call you what you want to be called. It
Mhm.
might take me a minute. Bear with me, but I'm going to do it. Um,
Yeah.
but so it's a non-enemy for the most part. But also it's coming in with demands. I mean, my God, if, I'm very sensitive. If what I get my feelings hurt, what if I come in and say, "You're not allowed to hurt my feelings"? Like, well,
Yeah.
I mean that knocks out half the jobs I've done in my life. You know,
Well, and there is a hierarchy, and I don't like hierarchies. I studied classical theater, and I know all about the great chain of being, and you're born into your lot in life, and that's it. But when I push back against this DEI online training course, I just had some questions. I had some disputes, and I had some things like, for example, the diversity thing includes a module on working with disabled people
hmm
and how we can make them empower them and facilitate all those things and be
right.
sensitive. But then it comes out with things like not diversity, disability drag as a term. That if an
Mm,
able bodied actor plays a disabled character, it's called disability drag.
wow.
So I write to the lovely person who's like the diversity consultant or whatever on staff at Equity, young person who clearly is trying to do a good job. And I said, okay, so if we do the miracle worker, does the actor who plays Helen Keller need to be deaf and blind? What about the Elephant Man? Like, we can't do the Elephant Man now because the actor has to. How does that work? And I'm like, Tiny Tim, Christmas Carol. Like, are we supposed to sit in the audience and go, disability drag? Oh, it's like, to me, it hasn't been thought through.
hmm
And so when I write to her and I ask for some, conversation about the things we actually might have to do in the theater, there's no answers. It's either a show of virtue. I don't know if you remember when we were in when George Floyd happened and Black Lives Matter happened
hmm
in lockdown. All these A-list actors like got on their cameras in like black and white, and there's like a piano playing in the background. They're like, I take responsibility
Mm.
for all the things I said. And I'm like, okay, and what?
I I don't know what that. Yeah, I don't think I
Oh,
was aware of that.
I'll send you a link. But basically, there was this sort of campaign for white Hollywood actors to come out and say, I am going to take responsibility for my ancestors and what our culture has done to people of color and yada yada. But it felt so talk is cheap.
Talk is cheap, and also I yeah, it's frustrating because first of all, it doesn't do anything for anyone.
Right.
It's similar to the fact that we now start performances with acknowledging that we were on stolen land. Well, either give it back or shut up. It's not
Yep.
doing anything for anybody except showing off how aware you are. And you know, I agree that atrocities were done. I agree that the land was stolen, and I agree that white people did oh my God, still do some horrible things to people who are not white and straight,
Mm.
ongoing and horrible. So what are we doing about it? You know, and I I will not take responsibility for whatever my ancestors did, because I would because they were wrong, and it's a different time, and we have hopefully, well, no, we have certainly learned and evolved. Again, not to
Yeah.
a satisfactory extent. It's not that we're done. It's just that I would rather see us all allied in villainizing the sins of the past, as opposed to stepping in as if we are
Mm.
the perpetrators, which
Mm.
doesn't help anybody. I want to
Hmm.
help.
Yeah.
I want to do something practical. Now, I'm gonna take it in this direction because I know it's a topic that you
Go
like,
for it.
and we might disagree on this. So,
Okay.
or maybe actually, maybe we won't. I always say that, and then we end up agreeing. So, the problem with the lived experience thing, like you know, disability drag and all that,
Yeah.
is that the answer lies in a double standard that is correct. So we're trying to apply something across the board that doesn't apply when the right answer is a double standard. What I mean is,
Mm.
I do not want to see a white person doing blackface ever. I don't ever
Nobody
want to see.
does.
Well, right. So I don't want to see a white person ever play a black or Asian role. I don't ever want to see that.
We
Do
saw
I?
it.
Do I care if a Puerto Rican plays a Mexican? No, it's okay. It's okay. Do we care if a Korean plays a Japanese person? We don't mind. We don't mind. Similarly, I don't care if an Italian plays a Jew. In fact, I encourage it.
Ah!
And I don't care if a Jewish person plays a Greek, because you
Right.
know, or if a Swede plays a somebody Danish. So
Well,
so
yeah.
what I'm saying is, to avoid going over the falls. I mean, I play a lot of lawyers, and I never went to college. So how do I play that? Oh, it's because I'm an actor. And the play, and the play I did, a great play that was very life changing for me. I played a Cuban former drag queen. And
Ooh.
here's what we do when we're actors and we do something like
Mm.
that. I learned about Cuba. I learned about their
Everything.
politics.
Yep.
We went and watched Cuban couples dance in a club, and I went, that lady, that's me, that's the one, that's the one, and we,
Yeah.
you know, learned all kinds of things. You had a cast full of mostly straight Jews playing Cubans, and you know, uh, 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 I was driving the playwrights home. It was this gay couple, this older gay couple from Miami, and they were just so excited from the first rehearsal. They said, "See," one of them said, "This is what I'm telling you. This play can only be done by gay Latinos." And I said, I don't usually out myself, but I had to say, I'm not actually Latino. And they said, "Why do you
Uh-huh.
speak Spanish?" I said, "Well, I remembered it from high school, and I did my work, you know." And they said, and I said, "This one's going to floor you. I really, I like girls." They're like, "What? You could have fooled us." I'm like, "Yes, that's my job."
Right.
so,
Exactly correct.
so the thing is, where to draw the line is a big question. But I do think that if we're trying to make a sweeping thing, it's
Yeah.
not going to work. Here's what I think has happened. We have turned the mirror around, so we were paying more attention to our experience as actors and our rights and our entitlement, which don't exist,
Right.
instead of the people we serve, the audience. If we can convince them, as I did
Yes.
as a gay Cuban, whether
Yes.
like, well, you could have fooled us. If you can convince the audience that you're Fanny Bryce, I'm in. If you
Oh,
can
me too.
convince the audience that you are blind and deaf, I'm in.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so that's it. And by the way, when I saw Hamilton, that man was George Washington. I was
Amazing.
convinced.
Oh,
I was
from the minute,
convinced.
yes.
I was
And
convinced.
it's, here's the thing. I feel like sometimes things are done as a stunt. Sometimes somebody's put in
Sometimes.
a role and it's not really like, Daniel Craig comes to Broadway in the Scottish play. They decide to put a disabled individual in a wheelchair user in the show, but they cast him as one of the assassins who goes after Banquo and Fleance.
Yeah, now you're losing.
And
Now you're losing.
ultimately, he
Yeah.
has to shoot him with a gun from his wheelchair. And I'm like, why not cast an actor as the porter, for those of you who
Mm-hmm.
are familiar with the play,
Great role.
who's the drunken porter? And so we hear him off stage, knock, 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 and we hear the whirring of his chair
It's
as
brilliant.
he comes out. That would be, this is the thing, when it works, it works. Like, did you see Doll's House Part 2 on Broadway? With
No.
Okay. Great play. It starred and names are now no longer Laurie Metcalf. Brilliant, and it's this envisioning of what happens after
Yes.
A Doll's House. And the first part of it is her and Jane Hudashell and I forget the name of the Chris Cooper playing her husband, and they're white people. It's about 45 minutes into the play, and the daughter, who they've been talking about the whole time, shows up, and it's Condola Rashad.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never seen her before. Loved her. She walks out. She's the actress. She's the actress playing the role. And you go, oh, she's black. Okay. And that's it. Because her performance was so compelling, and she had ridden that wave into her entrance, and she brought onto the stage everything we'd heard about before. Brilliant performance.
Yeah.
Brilliantly directed. I just think audiences are smarter than that, and they don't need to be preached at.
They don't need to be preached at,
Or scolded.
but I think we have to be responsible storytellers, and that's to your point about the Scottish play. It's we have to be responsible storytellers so that we don't do. I always say confusion is the enemy. I say that in my directing all the time. Confusion is the enemy. Confuse the audience and fuck you. So and here's what's interesting. Again, double standards all around. There are certain stories that are really conducive. First of all, for whatever reason, Shakespeare works interracially for me all the time, no matter what play it is. It doesn't matter because it's not plays about race,
Yeah.
and it works. Anything that's a fantasy world, I saw 110 of the Shade, interracial, gorgeous, and by the way, John Cullum and Audra McDonald as father
Yes.
and daughter. You cannot tell me they weren't father and daughter because those two actors did the work and they had such
Yes.
similar characteristics. And my
Yes.
God, it was such a thing of beauty.
I mean, the stretch for me was Audra trying to be Dowdy. Like,
Yeah.
she's so gorgeous,
But you can't do a colorblind hairspray. Hairspray is about race. It's partially about race. It has to be what it is. You can't. I don't ever want to see white dream girls ever. As long as I live, I don't ever want to see a white dream girls because the responsibility is the storytelling.
Yeah, makes no sense. Makes no sense.
And the most controversial thing I'm probably going to say that will probably get me canceled is just not every role is for every person.
Right.
And listen, I can't play Pirelli because I'm not a tenor. And I don't have those notes. That's my disability. I shouldn't have said that, but you know what I mean. I'm limited in what I can
Disadvantage.
portray. I'm limited in what I can portray.
Right.
I'm also never going to play Gaston. In Beauty and the Beast. And so the storytelling responsibility to me supersedes the needs of actors with disabilities or transsexual actors to have representation and jobs and opportunities. again, the answer to that is to tell stories about those
Right.
folks where that's exactly right, or to cast them in roles where it's like, yeah, that actually works really well and doesn't affect the story. I think it's brilliant.
Or
You know?
illuminates the story. Here's the thing.
Yes.
There's this big movement against thinking color blindness. It's
Yeah.
like anti-racism to do that.
Right.
However, you have to have both. I've
Yeah.
written an essay about this. You have to have both. Like when Cicely Tyson did Trip to Bountiful,
Mm-hmm.
which we know from Geraldine Page, last movie she ever did, won the Oscar. Gorgeous story about an old lady in Texas in the 50s.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
Cicely Tyson, Cuba Gooding Jr., Vanessa Williams
Mm.
told us a black story. So when she runs away, they didn't change a word. She runs away. She's in the bus depot waiting for the bus, and she's in the colored waiting room, and you just see the sign.
Yep.
It's just like, yeah, I sat there crying just from the sheer like intelligence, the lens that we were able to see the play through,
Yes.
And that's when it works. And I think sometimes
I love seeing
things
that.
are wedged in to make a point.
I mean, I am a big fan of rethinking pieces in a more inclusive way. I mean, that is not just talk. I get very excited by that idea when it rings and it works. And sometimes, as you say, makes the story better. It enhances the storytelling. I love that. But if it confuses people, let me tell you what happened with the Les Mis tour. The last time I did Les Mis, the Brits don't have our racial history. Les Mis works really well when it's integrated because it's a far enough away. It's a story, and it works. It works really
It's very
well.
presentational. It's grand.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's beautiful when it's a truly interracial cast. But when we started, they had only two black characters. One was Valjean, and one was Eponine. Here's what happens in the American brain now. Now you have a story about a black man who stole a loaf of bread and was sent to prison for 19 years.
Well,
And
yeah.
when he gets out of prison, the white guy says, I got my eye on you. I know your type. And then he goes around trying to find a job. And all these villages of all white people are like, no, get out. And he only gets on the right path when a white bishop enlightens him. And then he dedicates his life to raising a little white girl. It's a terrible story. It ruins that story. It ruins it. And then there's the girl from the streets fighting after the rich white guy. It's skewed it. It really doesn't. It made it not telling the story that Les Mis tells, which is about what kind of person you want to be, what kind of human you. Now, had those villages been integrated,
right?
It would. And by the way, I just saw Les Mis here in L.A. I finally saw the production that I was in, and I was so just overjoyed to see the many colors on that stage.
Oh, good. I mean, it should be.
Oh, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous to have, a black Marius and a Latina Cosette, and just, oh my God, it made my heart happy. But it has to be done in a way that is intelligent and tells the story.
Right. And people will make those connections because we're all in the same. I say this all the time. We're all in the same fish tank. We're all in the same cultural soup, and we'll make those connections.
Of course,
that's legit. Like years ago, they did this concert version of South Pacific at Carnegie Hall, and it was a concert version. And Brian Stokes Mitchell played Emile DeBeck.
Great.
With Reba McEntire. Great, but in a real production, it wouldn't work. Because the whole crux of the story is she finds out he's got two half Asian children.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
And she discovers her racism. And if a black guy couldn't play Emile DeBeck, it's not possible for the story.
Right.
But I loved hearing Stokes sing that music. I mean, it was like, whoa, Sure. But then there's this other thing. Did you see, and then we'll move on to the next thing, but the Pasadena Playhouse did a production of Little Shop of Horrors. And they rethought it a bit, and they had this fabulous Latino kid, like very nebbishy kid with this extraordinary voice playing Seymour, and they cast wonderful trans actress MJ Rodriguez as Audrey. And there's them performing suddenly Seymour on the Kimmel Show or something. When MJ starts to sing, gorgeous voice. Looking kind of like Dowdy. She had little glasses on. Like, I guess that was her concept of the character. But when a trans actress starts to sing, nobody ever treated me kindly. Daddy left early, mama was poor. You go, you're like, it's a
Oh.
whole other layer. And nothing has to be done to point to it.
Mhm.
She's famous, so we know she's a trans actress. But man,
Isn't
whoever
that
cast
something?
that show, hats off to you, because that's a show that, it's like, it's fun. You've done that show, right? It's like,
Yeah.
it's cute, but this was a whole other level. It was like, wow.
I love when it's something that makes you go, oh, now I understand the show. As
Yeah.
opposed to a show that's near and dear to our hearts, Laughter on the 23rd Floor. I saw a production
Mm,
out here that was cast uh, interracially and directed by somebody who, well, I love him personally. It just
mm.
wasn't. It wasn't Laughter on the 23rd Floor, which is which is really about a bunch of predominantly Jewish writers. That's what
Yeah.
it's about.
Based on real people like
And
Mel Brooks. And yeah.
and again, there's a rhythm, there's a language, there's a it's and again, I don't care if they're really Jewish. I just want to believe they are. I want to believe they're white New York Jews in the 50s.
Right.
Otherwise, you really do lose the story.
I think I, in many ways, feel that the Jews invented comedy. But they certainly did what the Italians did with Commedia dell'arte in terms of creating archetypes. The Jews have always made fun of their own. We've
Hmm.
always had it's like the tales of Helm, and it's like we have our village. It's like Fiddler on the Roof, and we've got this type and that type, and there's the Yentas and the Yachnes and the cheap, money grubbing and the deadbeats we've got these characters,
Okay,
and we're not afraid of them, and
right.
we're not. But we live in a time where anything that's like a stereotype has to be banished.
Mm-mm.
And I don't think that keeps Jewish humor, which is so delightful, alive. And I think we need it.
I think that we again nuance. Having a nuanced point of view is what's lost. Not all stereotypes are hateful. Not all stereotypes come from hate or fear. Sometimes they come from celebrating and gently poking fun at the things that are unique about our cultures, you know,
Right.
which is why, yes, I will make fun of my gay friends for being very gay or my black friends for being very black because
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, uh, uh, and they'll make fun of me, and so,
But there are activists out there who won't let you
no,
say things about yourself.
I
Like if
know.
you're
So
yeah.
right. So
Okay.
I'm answering your question.
Okay. Continue.
I think uh, many stereotypes exist because they reflect something true about the culture. Now, here's the problem: prejudice, pre-Judas, judging in advance, is assuming that anybody from that group has certain qualities, like saying, "Oh, those black people could sing. Oh, they can all dance. Or oh, they're all poor." This is prejudice. This is
Right.
bigotry.
Yeah.
Saying Jews, oh, they're all greedy. No, it's a fair stereotype, but it's done. But when you prejudge people and say, "Oh, you're like this, you're like this,
Right.
you're like this," I don't even like it when people say, "Oh, you're not gay, therefore this, and this," because you're wrong in making those assumptions. I don't like sports. I'm not competitive. You know what I mean?
Mm,
And so,
mm.
so that's what pre-Judas prejudice is. But celebrating the quirks. Oh God, I love. Listen, I love the jargon. I love the quirks of each. I love the lingo of each group. I love that groups have their own lingo. And I
Yeah.
listen. We grew up in the '70s. The '70s was I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. The '70s
Mm.
was
Free to be you and me.
it's free to be you and me. Reach out, touch somebody's hand,
Yeah.
make the world a better place if you can. Commercials for hamburgers were about joy and peace and harmony. It was a happier. Again, no one is saying the '70s were perfect, but there was a happier, more communal time in terms of
Yeah.
going, hey, you're from Africa. I want to learn. Tell me about your culture. Oh,
Right.
what's it like? Blah 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 blah. Blah. Uh, come to my seder. And there was a lot more of this cross pollination, and that's what I celebrate. My parents took me to see all kinds of music that wasn't ours, and so I think that celebrating our quirks and our foibles and our weirdnesses, and I think is part of the joy of loving each other and being alive.
And it keeps
Uh,
the flavor, the cultural
yes,
flavor going,
and
you
again,
know?
to our earlier conversation, I will extend that to people playing Jews who are not Jews. If you can do it, I'm sorry.
Yes.
The cast of Mrs. Maisel is fabulous. I don't care if they're
Fabulous.
Jewish or not. I
So
buy it
good.
all. I buy it.
Yep. Me
That's what
too.
matters. What matters is, do I buy it? Do I buy it? Yes, I do. Can a non-Jew play a Jew? 100%. I welcome Bradley Cooper. Can't wait to see him. Can't wait to see
Me
him.
too.
You
Me
know?
too. Yes. And see, here's the other thing. It's like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Right.
If he comes out and he says, well, I spent a year consulting with the Bernstein family and
Right.
all of this stuff, and I've done my homework, and I love him, and I revere him. It's this, and I want to look more like him in order to play him accurately and all of that stuff. If you make all of those claims, oh, you're just, trying to justify something.
Well,
And it's like,
we're playing
okay,
gotcha. We're playing gotcha. That's what we're.
yeah, that's
It's,
it exactly.
instead of looking for opportunities to go, listen, and this is a big passion of mine.
Yeah.
I want us to have conversations with each other again as friends. I have made a mission of making several friends on Twitter who are MAGAs, who I consider friends.
Right.
And we hate each other's politics,
Yeah.
but we don't have to hate each other. We don't have to, I'll tell you a quick story about that.
Yeah. No, please do.
So I have a friend who's really falling between the cracks right now because she's a script reader for the studios and there's no work and she's not eligible for any of the financial support. So I set up a GoFundMe for her. One of my MAGA friends on Twitter, who, wait for it, is a tarot card reader. How's that for fucking with your stereotypes?
Okay.
She said, I will offer a free tarot card reading to anybody who donates $100 to your friend. And when I told my friend Mindy that, she cried because she's like, this is somebody who you think of as your enemy. And yes, I object to everything she stands for politically. But I said to her, I hate your politics, but I love your humanity. And I just feel like I'm. It breaks my heart. I want to walk us back to being in the same club, in being roommates again, and in the theater, being in comrades in the theater, and because that's available to us. That's who we really are. And I hate all this othering and being careful with each other and stepping around and making people wrong for playing parts of other races. And it's like, instead of going, hey, you really got us. Good work.
Yeah. And I don't know if you feel this way, but to me, it's just sort of like the implication is that what you just encapsulated, that space that we carve out for ourselves as theater people, that we were kidding ourselves for the past 3 decades. That you and I, because we're white privileged, that we somehow had a different experience from everybody else. I saw bullying. I've stood up for people. I've called it out. I really all the way down but the fact that I'm having to say that, to me, it just creates ill will from the get. And I don't think that's who we are. I don't think that's who we are.
I have also seen, within our enclave, people respected and elevated who are of a non-white, non-straight, non-white folks. I've seen many, many gay directors, and they were in the position of authority. They were honored. They were respected. They were heard. I've had black directors. I've had people of all different backgrounds, whatever, identities, treated with regard, including, we do that with kids too. When a kid is in the cast, you're like, so what do you want to do in this scene? What do you think?
Yeah. I just worked with 20 kids in Oliver, and they're so wonderful. And they're looking at me all the time. There were 2 little boys in the Fagans gang that would sit next to me in note sessions with their little pad and their pen like me. And, one of them leaned over to me, and the shyest one, leaned over to me and goes, I'm going to play Fagin someday. And I said, when I was your age, I said the same thing. And guess what? Here I am playing it. So take notes.
We treat the kids as colleagues, don't we?
I think kids just want to belong. Well, I think they want to belong.
Well, I also think that kids who are actors, they're in the tribe. The parents are not. I learned this on the road where the parents were trying
the muggles. The parents are muggles.
The parents wanted so much to fit in, and we're like, yeah. Anyway, so go back to the kid. What were you saying? The
Oh,
kids,
no,
the
no, no.
kids. Yeah.
The kids, here's the thing. The first time I encountered the ritual of circling up on the first day of rehearsal and giving pronouns and whatever was in 2019. I was doing The Sound of Music up in Vermont. Very diverse cast. The kids were every shade of the rainbow, and there were 14 of them because there had to be a second cast of 7 Von Trapp children.
Of course.
It didn't make any sense, like, historically. It's about,
It's
a
okay.
bunch of
Yeah.
Austrians. But in this setting, in this community, they wanted the best kids they can get, and they cast the kids that were
Lovely.
the best. And they're terrific, right? So we're all circled up, and I hadn't had an experience of this, and the choreographer, lovely person, non-binary person, I think, said, we're going to go around the circle, we're going to give our preferred pronouns, and we're going to say where and how we prefer not to be touched. And I went, okay, well, this is for the kids. The kids feel okay and feel safe and stuff like that. But I was, and I continue to be adamant not to offer my preferred pronouns.
Mm-hmm.
I will if like I'm in a group and there's a kid there, like on the last show I did. If one of the kids had gone, hey, you didn't give your pronoun, I would.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, went around the circle. And it was a big circle. They got to me and I said, hi, I'm Jamie and I'm a man. And I'm a hugger. So if you don't like being hugged, raise your hand. And the littlest girl playing Gretel, this little Asian girl, raises her hand like this and goes, I like hugs, and came across the circle to me and hugged me.
Oh, I love her.
And I went, this is where it's at, folks.
Yeah.
This is it. This is the essence of human connection. And I think we put things up in front of us. Yes, we want to be sensitive to people. But the assumption, and also, I don't want to lead. I just met you. I don't want to lead with what gender I think I am. I don't want to get into that because I know what I am. And I don't mind you assuming that I'm male. And to me, it's like,
well, also, like, I don't like.
What does that achieve?
I don't want to be put in a box.
Right.
I remember, again, here's another story about me playing a gay character. I was playing
you play more gay characters than I do.
I do. I was playing a very, very feminine gay character in this reading, and the director was looking at me at one point, and I said, what? He goes, I was just wondering if you were gay or straight. And I said, were you? And that was the end of the conversation. I don't need to out myself to you. I don't want to limit your thinking about me.
Nope.
I really don't. And so don't put me in a fucking box. My box is actor, and I just don't dig that,
Yeah.
Because again, people make a whole lot of assumptions. Here's another thing, by the way, just little another part of this.
Yes, please.
I knew we'd talk for 7 hours.
We'll wrap it up shortly. Yes.
So look, my ancestry is Jewish. Here's what people don't know. 5 generations ago, my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather did not want to be Jewish, moved out of his household, moved in with a Gentile family, and for 5 generations, my family has had no Jewish culture or religion. We went to church. We celebrated Martin Luther King Day and Easter and Christmas. I did not go to temple. I do not know Hebrew. I was not bar mitzvahed. None of the things you associate with being Jewish. Nor was I looking for a nice Jewish girl to marry, as you know. My wife is a nice chick.
Jenny's awesome. Yes, she is. Right. She's a white girl.
so again, there was a period of time during which people say, "Are you Jewish?" I'm like, "No, Russian. I'm Russian," because I don't. They had a whole set of things that went with the idea of me being Jewish. So in what way am I equipped to play Tevye? What about my lived experience makes me right to play a rabbi? Nothing. I am absolutely ill-equipped to play a rabbi, whereas there's a Puerto Rican somewhere who grew up in a Jewish neighborhood who could nail it.
Probably,
nail
yeah.
It.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I don't have Jewish lived experience.
Right.
Except growing up in Manhattan, which makes everybody Jewish. Only in Manhattan will you hear
by osmosis.
You'll hear Dominicans speaking Yiddish because that's
I love it.
Right.
I love it. Yes.
And that's the other thing that makes me such a melting pot guy is growing up in New York. But it's like,
yeah,
I have so little relationship with being Jewish. You can't even imagine, Jews.
Interesting because, we met, for the folks at home, I auditioned for your production of Laughter on the 23rd Floor that you were directing in North Carolina, and came in to audition for the role that you had played a couple of times at that point. And I knew how to play that guy because my mother's first generation American, grew up in a household full of Eastern European Jews speaking Yiddish, and grew up in the 50s, the golden age of Broadway and
Yeah.
stuff, and brought me up on all this stuff, the old record albums,
Also,
Alan Sherman and all these people.
Also, when I said to you, this guy's a joke writer, but it's like making a suit. He's a suit salesman, and you were like, "Oh my god, my grandfather was a suit salesman."
He ran two sweatshops and
Yes.
lived in sin with my grandmother, who my mother thought she thought he was her actual grandfather until she was an adult and found out that he had a whole other family somewhere else.
God.
Scandalous. But
Yeah.
when I connected with you, I was like, oh my God, yes, we get the cadences of the Jewish humor. We
Yes.
get
Of course.
the flavor of it.
I
Because
get
when you do
listening to
it
Mel
that,
Brooks, yeah, and hearing.
but I
hearing,
never knew this about you.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
grew up like a goyim, like the
well,
goyim.
Again, 1970s Unitarian church, hippy dippy parents, like that. And I used to say to my mama, what are we? She's like, well, our ancestors were Jewish, but we're nothing. So that's how she would explain it to me. So listen, that's my
Okay.
upbringing. Now again, however, that said, I listened to Mel Brooks. I listened to Alan Sherman. Like all that, all those influences were around me. So it's not like
And
I
they were on
didn't.
television too. I mean, this is the other
Yeah,
thing. We had 4 channels, and
right.
we all watched the same shows. We watched All in the Family. We watched Mary Tyler
Yes.
Moore. We watched
Yes.
The Jeffersons. We all absorbed that stuff. It was part of our. This is the part of it that I think we benefited from growing up when we did, because this was just entertainment, like Flip
Yeah.
Wilson and
That's
Cher, and that. That's what was there, and we all partook of it, and I idolized Michael Jackson as a child, because he was a child star.
Oh yeah.
I had everything.
That's the other thing, is this idea that we can't relate to a story that doesn't take place in our neighborhood is bullshit. I mean, Thelma and Louise touched me very deeply, and that was about women. That was about women empowerment, and
Yes.
I got mad on behalf of what happened to those characters. And I've seen stories of that. I mean, I saw The Woman King. I cried buckets. It's a Black African story.
Mm.
Humanity is humanity. That's what I want to get back. My God,
Yeah,
but the idea that it's unrelatable because it's like, oh, it's a white story. Get into it. you know.
I agree. I want to touch on one more thing before we wrap up, and I want. Well, I have a question
I
for you
always hate
too.
when we wrap up.
Me too. Me too. But how long? How
Okay, I
long?
want to. I want to just say. I want to say
Yes.
for your 4 listeners, uh, uh, that Jamie Beeman is a genius as an actor. And when I was casting Laughter on the 23rd Floor, I literally was freaking out because I found no one to play this role that was so important and so precious to me. And person after person, I was like, I'm not getting it. And I said to the casting person, am I too close to this? She said, you might be, because that guy was okay. It's like, yeah, it's just not it. And then Jamie Beeman walked in, and the angels sang, and the clouds parted, and it was nothing like my version of the role, which is my wife gave the biggest compliment. She says, I liked his milk just as much as yours, and they're completely different. And that's a big compliment, because my wife
Thank you.
she's very picky.
Oh,
And
I know. She's
I
a
just,
she's a tough critic.
she really is. And I just want the world to know that I was just so fucking happy to find you, and you so understood this very complicated, very funny, and very sad
Sad
man.
character. Yeah.
I
Kind
love
of
him
a
so
yeah.
much. I
I
love
did
that.
too.
I love him.
And it's funny that you said thank you for all of that. I love you too. And honestly, it was the meeting of like kindred spirits from the minute we
Yes.
met each other. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm so grateful for that. But it's interesting. You and I have played the same roles.
Sure.
I played Cookie in Nice Work If You Can Get It with Sally Struthers, and I did it in 3 productions, and it was like a thing. And then I auditioned out for the Sacramento production that you did, and they looked at me like, what are you doing?
Isn't that
And
funny?
then I found out you were cast, and I went, of course, completely different. But that's the fun of being a character actor, and it's a testament to those roles
Yeah.
because they're made to be inhabited by a big personality that's creative and outrageous. And, and the good ones, I mean, there's so many ways to play them.
Well, you still have to do
So
the producers.
I know I've auditioned for every single principal role multiple times in that show.
Of course you have. You could.
Um, one last thing. If you were talking to a young person, I just did an interview with my friend Gabe Brown and her fiance Kramer, and they graduated from a musical theater conservatory in 2020, did their industry showcase, and promptly went into lockdown. Came back to the industry, and these are free-thinking individuals who are resistant to some of the activism and orthodoxy going on, and they're making their own stuff. But like I'm talking to them and I'm quoting something from All About Eve. Uh, Never heard of it. They've never heard of it. And I'm like, that's the ultimate theater movie. It's like, fasten your seatbelts. And it's like, chirp, chirp, crickets. I'm like, you have to know All About Eve if you're going to be in the theater. And these are like crafted people who studied in London and do stage combat. I'm like, what? No, you have to know All About Eve, at least. How do we, and they don't know to look for it. That's the thing. It's not right in front of them. And unless somebody directs them to these resources and these things, like we were talking about earlier, the mentorship, what do you say to young Gen Z performers just starting out right now about how they can educate themselves and take hold of their craft and the traditions that you write about in your beautiful book? What do you say to them?
Part of the actor's job is time travel and culture travel. We have to be able to morph into different times and different mindsets and different cultures. So, for example, one of the things I've seen with my students is anytime they're going to play somebody religious, they play them as hypocrites and with great hate and great sarcasm. They have a sarcastic approach as opposed to embracing that for a big part of our history, this was the norm, was to be a person of faith. And if you're going to play a person of faith, you have to do it sincerely. Similarly, if you're going back and playing, a housewife in the 50s, there was not as much awareness of that was repressive, or that there were other opportunities for. You have to be able to time travel. So that's a long-winded way of saying that we should really keep cultivating broad thinking that goes in lots of different directions, that tries on lots of different cultures and time periods and color, and doesn't prejudge. Part of being an actor, I think, is to not prejudge
Yeah.
and to not make snap decisions. I'm always telling my students, slow down. Let's wade through this material. Let's re-examine it. And I think it's very important to recognize that there are times other than your own and cultures other than your own. This is one of the problems I have with, there's a certain pocket of gay actors who only know other gay actors, and their behavior is always straight out of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Oh,
And then they can't step out of that to play a role.
right.
And I get concerned about that. I think it's very important that we know all kinds of different people and
Yeah.
find ourselves in
I'm a
all
big
kinds of different
queen. I
rooms.
can drop it if I mean, that I had to learn to do that.
And so can I. So,
Well, apparently you are the gay actor of choice. I think it's funny though when you say that, a certain kind of person would go, "Oh, that's homophobic. What do you mean
Yeah,
acting
that's right.
gay?"
That's
And
right.
it's
That's right.
like,
Right.
bitch, we all know what we mean acting gay. Okay,
Right.
stop it. That's the part of it, the performative, pearl clutching thing. First of all, it's so unattractive. It's so, nobody likes
That's
a
another discussion.
pedantic
But
like
yes,
that. But also,
let me. Yeah. You know what it is?
continue.
You know what it is? If you are practicing a veneer in life,
Yeah.
there's a set of behaviors that you've taken on that are not organic to you, then you can't stack another set of behaviors on top of it as an actor. You have to be enough of a blank slate to go,
Right.
I'm going to take on different physicality, different vocal patterns.
Yes.
This is what we love. A different
Yes.
way of walking and talking. And
Immersion.
right.
Yes.
And not everything leads to like a neck move and a finger wag, because we're watching RuPaul's Drag Race. That's not every character. So
Right.
what I think it has to do is it. I just don't like inauthenticity. If that's you, live, girl, live. But I think that um, very few people have a voice that's organically like this. Like this is the organic voice.
Mm.
This has to be developed and practiced. It's not how you're. You know what I mean? If that's you, live. I love it. I'll celebrate you.
So there are sort of we imbibe each other's mannerisms and stuff because it's part of what makes us the tribe when we're together and we can go,
Right. Sure.
yes. But listen, I know plenty of gay men who
Hmm.
hate that shit.
Oh, sure. Of
That
course.
think
I do
it's
too. Yeah.
regressive. That
I do
they
too.
think it's whatever. And don't get me started on the pecking order with who's more straight acting in the gay community,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's a whole other disease.
I don't know anything about that part, but
Thank
trust me.
goodness.
Yeah.
But just read Boys in the Band. Okay,
Yeah.
the one straight guy, butch guy, comes in to be the cowboy stripper, and everybody's like killing each other to get him. It's an old shame, self shame thing.
Interesting.
So your advice is what for these kids? Should they? Because what I would do when I was working with somebody who had way more experience than I, way more like Broadway and stuff like Gary Beach or Judy Blazer or
Hmm.
Sally Struthers, who's a dear friend now, I took them out to lunch. Or
Oh
I'd come
yeah.
sidle up to them at the Bagel Rama on the first date read through with the bagel table, and I'd be like, so what
Teach
was
me
it like
things.
doing such and such? And I can tell you their stories
Yes.
because it's important to me that they shared that with me and I learned something about them and their experience, and we share an enthusiasm for the
Mm.
work that you can never have knocked out of you.
No.
You
No.
know,
I think, but that's what I mean about thinking broadly. It's like visiting. Uh, uh, yes, visiting cultures other than your own is what it comes down to. Jenny and I had a friend who's really into guns, and he said, "I'd love to take you guys shooting one day." And I said, "Everything about that is frightening and offensive. So yes, so yes,
yeah.
yes." I went out shooting a gun.
How was it?
I didn't like it, and it scared me. But it was a different experience
Hmm.
than my norm, and I think actors need to do that. You know,
Yes, I
you need
agree.
to.
I mean, I have rules about I'm not allowed to be judgy about something if I haven't tried it.
I mean, we should like. I don't like opera. I'll go to the opera, of course.
Go
It
with an
was
enthusiast and let them show you what's amazing about it. Like
listen.
Cher in Moonstruck.
When I was on the road with Les Mis the first time, I was like, oh, I don't like rap music, and somebody said, I want you to watch 8 Mile, and I watched it. I really loved 8 Mile. I mean, again learned a little bit about a culture that I don't really operate in, and
Right.
I think we have to think broadly. You and I love going like, oh, I'm in the 1900s now. It's like
Oh
that's what does
yeah.
that mean? What does that mean? You know, so
Everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
I
so that's
mean,
what I mean.
so I think that I'd love to see young people just get into the project of like every now and then I'll be doing a musical and it's always young people. We're like a handful of older people, and then there's all these young people who are dancers and the ensemble stuff, whatever. And there's always one. Like I was doing Nice Work, if you can get it, we talked about earlier in Wichita.
Yes.
And this young woman, I was making a reference to something from an old movie from the
Yeah.
30s, which I feel like is just invaluable to watch those films when you're doing a show like that, because Joe DePietro was like invoking all of that
Oh, he's
stuff.
so good. That script is so
So,
good.
so clever and so good. And she came up to me, she was playing Eileen Evergreen, the
Mhm.
modern dance,
Yes.
woman. And she came up to me and she goes, so what movies should I watch? Because I don't know any old movies.
Mm.
And I'm like, really? Do you know Betty Davis? Do you know Katharine Hepburn? I'm
Yeah.
like, okay. When we go home tonight, I'll send you a list. 3 films for each of these iconic stars, male and female, like 4 of each. Take your pick. See what you get out of it. She called me up that evening before bedtime, and she was crying. And she said, I just finished Dark Victory. She's like, why did I not know about this? And to me, I was just like, yes, because these things are so available now. And they
Listen,
just don't know to
yeah.
go after it. We have to kind of steer them in that
Well,
direction.
I think there are two things that you and I can get better at. One is,
Okay.
one is, okay, kids, I'm hosting movie night every Thursday. So you're all gonna come over. I'll order us a pizza, whatever, or we'll do potluck, and
Yeah.
tonight's movie, such and such. That's one thing. The other thing is I am not as well versed in some things as and so I've really been deliberately going, oh, wait a minute, I've never seen such and such. I've never seen. I better go see it. A million
Mm-hmm.
years ago, I mean, it's decades now, but I finally saw Citizen Kane. I'm like, this is good. This is a good movie.
Yeah.
It's like, no shit,
Pretty good.
you know, you know. And sometimes I don't get it. I don't get Gone with the Wind. I don't get it, but that's okay. You don't have to like everything. But
I think a lot of those movies are the icons they are because they were breaking new
right,
ground technologically, new ground in terms of
right. But I
what
mean,
they
if
were
you haven't
capable
seen,
of
if
doing.
you haven't watched Streetcar, you got to watch. I mean, you got to watch Streetcar. You got to watch it. I mean, so I'm
Yeah.
trying to. There are classic plays I've yet to see, and that's something I'm working on. But I think I want to get better again in this wonderful mentorship tradition.
Yeah.
You and I have to recognize we're the old ones
I know it.
now.
But see, my thing is, I welcome that. I welcome that, and I don't want to walk into a room with people who've imbibed a certain kind of an idea and be looked at as gay white privilege or something, or oppressor or whatever. When I want to offer it.
by the
I
way,
want to offer it.
by the way, I think we both agree white privilege is a real thing. That's a real thing.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure, yes.
I mean,
I
my
mean,
God,
it's entrenched. It's entrenched.
yes, and it
But
is something that we both. Just to be clear, we're both
yeah,
very committed to working on that and improving that and acknowledging
absolutely.
it, but
Yes,
not but
acknowledging it. But here's the thing: the hardcore activists, the real confrontation people, the real hard, like
right. We're
those
bad.
people, and the people they really want to shame and want to bring
Hmm.
down and want to
Right.
put in their place are unreachable. And it's most of the
Yeah.
country. It's most of the country. It's your MAGA friend who reads tarot. I'm
Right.
saying the people they really want to subdue,
They're not in the room.
it's not going to happen. And I just want people to understand that the place of the theater, we so rarely get to go there. And the
Mm.
work of the theater, that old quote, they always say Edwin Booth said it, but it wasn't him. It was some other unknown actor of his time, which makes it more poignant. He says, an actor is a sculptor who carves in snow.
Hmm.
It's that our work is there and then it's gone.
Yeah.
And what we share is the memory of it
Yeah.
together. You know, like our company of Laughter on the 23rd Floor, there was, for the
Hmm.
longest time, almost decade, there would be these just spontaneous text threads, hilarious people,
Hmm.
delightful, and we all still love each other. And it's because you brought us together. And this is a great way to end things. When's your next Audition Psych 101? Because I cannot recommend
Oh.
this highly enough.
Just for anyone who doesn't know, for your four listeners, Audition Psych 101 is a class that I've taught for 20 years all over the country that's about the psychology of the audition, because I think that's where we really get fucked up. Um, I haven't been teaching it live. There is an online course available now at auditionpsych101.com. There's also a book version, and I'm going to be putting out an audiobook probably in the next couple of months. So there's that. I do want to get back to teaching it live, but I don't. Actually, you can sign up for the mailing list and be notified when that happens
Okay,
at
there,
audition.
there will
Yeah,
be all kinds of links
yeah, yeah.
available.
But yeah, but
Let's pray the strike is over soon.
oh, please, please,
Uh,
God.
I'm praying that you come back to the city soon because I
I hope
miss
I have a
having you
reason.
nearby.
Thank you.
I know I can be something of a hermit in my little cave, but I wish you were going to be here next month for my nightclub act
So do I.
return,
So do
uh,
I.
which I'm terrified about, just
Ugh.
terrified. But if it goes well, when we bring it back, we're going to live stream it, so you'll be able to
Oh,
see
good. No, I'll be doing Inherit the Wind at Pasadena Playhouse. That's where I'll be
it. When is
next
that?
month. I start rehearsals October 3rd.
Inherit
So
the Wind, fantastic. Who are you
yeah,
playing?
I'm playing the mayor.
Right. Excellent. I love
I
that.
mean,
And my mother used to tell the story of how she went to see Paul Muni in Inherit the Wind.
wow.
I can tell my mother's story. My mother told stories the same way every time, you know.
Yeah.
And she said that his first entrance, he entered at the back of the stage and came in, had his like coat over his shoulder, very kind of like slowly walking out. And it was his comeback. And he was a great stage actor.
Yes,
And
of
he had won
course.
the Oscar for Emile Zola and all of that. He was like us. He was a chameleon. And he walked in upstage and then walked down center towards the audience, and everyone stood up
Of
in
course
the
they did.
audience and
That's
didn't
how it's
applaud,
done.
just stood silent, like en masse. And my mother was blown. She was a teenager, and stage struck teenager, and she was blown away by that. The
Wow.
power of a great actor.
And a great fucking entrance, let's be
And a
honest.
great entrance. Hello. So break legs with that.
Thank
Uh,
you. Thank you.
the Sage Actors Handbook, I cannot recommend it highly enough. And please, for my young people, I'm not beating up on you. I'm trying to open doors. I'm being your Auntie May. I'm going to open doors you never dreamed about. And just be curious. It's all right at your fingertips. We had to go searching for this stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
you have it in your hand. Please, Michael, stay on line until you're uploaded.
Okay.
The
Okay.
technology, just until it's, we've preserved it for my 4 listeners.
Yes.
And I love you, Michael.
I
I
love
hope
you
this
too,
strikes
man.
over soon.
I'm so glad we got to chat today. This is really a joy. Yeah.
I can't thank you enough because you're underscoring everything that I'm passionate about, and you're giving me food for thought about my own ideas about what's going on and how I can be better and how it could be better. And I just think anyone listening to this knows how stupid we are for the work we do and how much we love it.
Yeah.
And that binds us together. But beside that, you're immense, my friend.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, ladies, gentlemen, and others,
Yes.
for joining me here. And stay tuned, stay strong, and we'll see you next time on the Cornfield Podcast. Bye-bye.